This is Invisible Inc., the podcast for underserved women entrepreneurs. And I'm your host, Shubha Chakravarti, founder of Achieve. In this podcast, I talk to women entrepreneurs at every stage of their journey about the challenges, the highs, the lows, and what they've learned along the way. We'll also hear from experts who share valuable tips on how to succeed the smart way. Let's jump in. How can you tell if your burning problem is a good candidate for a startup? How do you know when it's time to quit your job and jump in full time? What do you do when you've poured years into your startup and there's still no traction? How do you get angel investors to open their checkbooks for a category-defying business? In today's episode, engineer turned entrepreneur Reetu Gupta answers all these questions and more as she describes her journey to make Circled In the LinkedIn for the new generation. Reetu, thank you for joining us on this podcast today. We're really delighted to have you.
It's exciting to be here.
So, you're the founder of Circled In. What does the company do? Tell us a little bit about the company.
So Circled In is a young professionals platform for Gen Z youth. It gives them an opportunity and power to showcase themselves holistically and connecting to the best fit colleges and employers. Think LinkedIn, but made for Gen Z youth, high school students and college students, so that they can showcase their strengths and talents, their passions and interest, and connecting them with the best fit colleges, best fit internships and jobs, and anything and everything. The idea is it's actually built K through 16 grade. They can carry it all the way to college. We already have 7,000 college and trade school database on Circled In for high school students to find. Our next step is to bring internships and jobs into this portal, bring employers so they can come find their internships, their part-time workers, as well as fresh grad out of college. And then students get to carry that profile with them. The data stays with them. That's one of the value proposition of Circled In.
So what gave you the idea and when did you start thinking about making this a real business?
The idea came from a personal pain point, actually. So I have 2 kids and my whole career was in technology. I grew up in technology. I can say that I took it for granted. And many years ago, my daughter applied for an application. It took us 3 weeks to put that application together. And even then, we could not showcase who she was because she's very passionate about medicine. There was no way to show her clubs she had done, volunteering she had done, the science project she had done. It was very frustrating, partially because we didn't remember many things she had done. With 2 kids, it's hard to remember everything. And secondly, there was no easy way on that application to say, here who she is. So at that time, I thought, you and I have LinkedIn, there must be something for kids, which is made for them. And what I mean by that, it's secure. It's for their activities, not asking them patents on LinkedIn, but asking their sports and music and volunteering and something that is more user-friendly. So didn't find anything. Being an engineer and a marketer and my own customer, I was like, wow, $1 billion opportunity. And I jumped on it.
What are the first days like? Walk us through. You have the idea, you're burning with fire to make it happen. What happens next?
Oh, God, long days and long nights. So first off, the decision is also not easy, right? Before you say, okay, I'm quitting, there's a lot that goes on before that. And it should. If it is not, then that's wrong. You want to make sure that you do your due diligence. I was working in Fortune 50 company. I had really good job. You had to be crazy to quit all that and do what I did. And I still did. I came up with the idea. Then all this noodling started happening in my mind. Also, one thing I was very conscious of were my own biases. The idea started with education. And I'm thinking, am I the only Asian mom thinking like this? Is that thing kicking into me that my stereotyping is saying, oh, education is the most important thing in the world. So I wanted to make sure that it's not just me who's the customer of my product and my business. There are other families and other students and other parents. So right off the bat, I actually interviewed 100 parents. And I wanted to make sure that it's not just me thinking this idea is needed. And I was very diligent. I remember that spreadsheet I created about the demographics of my survey population, everyone from elementary school all the way to high school, everyone from low income to high income, and from different races. All those parameters I put in my list, and I interviewed 100 parents.
Just a quick question. How do you find these people and how did you get them to say yes to what I imagine would be very deep questions?
So, two, it was not deep questions. And two, remember, we were submerged in that market. Our kids were in school. Didn't take much. I started with my next door neighbor. I said, hey, Mia, can I have like 20 minutes of your time? And she was like, yeah, absolutely. And then I said, hey, can you introduce me to 2 more people that you know? So that's how the chain reaction started. So I basically utilized every venue I could find to get those 100 people. So this was my due diligence. So on market, on technology, can we do it? What does it take? So we had 2 startups before this that we had done as side hustle. And one of them was on data. And we got cease and desist from Craigslist because we were using their data. So lesson learned, we needed to make sure that how we are going to build a platform that's going to be user-friendly and still very secure and still very much accessible when it comes to data. And what should be our priorities? What should product look like?
Were there any inner challenges, any inner hurdles you had to overcome, and how did you get through that process?
I had the education. So I grew up in engineering, then I got the business experience. But none of that can prepare you for entrepreneurship, honestly. So you have skills, you have check marks, you have education and diplomas and degrees, but there is a lot that goes on. But I will segment them in 2 groups. So when you talk about internal, that's actually a positive emotion. If you don't have that, no need to change anything. Your internal feelings say you need to do something different than what you're doing today. So that, in my case, was positive energy. And that is what gives you that kick in your rear you need every once in a while. And also the strength to go through hard times that you come across in this journey. Second part is like your hard skills. Do you know how to get those resources to make it happen? Corporate America serves everything on a silver platter to you. Whereas as an entrepreneur, you have to collect every single resource that you need to make your dream a reality. That was a hard process. I mean, it's not hard in the sense that it was not doable, but there were a lot of learning on the way, a lot of mistakes on the way, a lot of pushing yourself. Okay, it's okay. It didn't happen today. It'll happen tomorrow. Maybe it'll happen next week or next month.
Talk to us about how you came up with a business model. How did you figure out where you were going to make your revenue? Where did the financial projections play into this?
Business model evolves over time. We had circled in 1.0 and circled in 2.0. We started circled in 1.0 thinking we will sell it to schools. We did not even have college on our radar at that time. We said we'll build a product. It's a private network for each school. You have students as the foundation, teachers and counselors, and the organization with dashboards, giving you the data analytics. We wasted 2 years. Nothing happened. Only thing that happened were 100,000 miles on my car and less than 3,000 students in 2 years. So in 2017, I was actually giving a talk on South by Southwest, and Mark Cuban was there as well. And Mark Cuban gave a talk, and in his talk, he talked about companies that are data, AI, and ML based. In next 5 years, only those will thrive. A light bulb went off in my head. I was like, I'm sitting on this $1 billion idea, and I'm waiting for a K-12 system to adopt us. That's stupid. Came back home, went to the drawing board, redid the whole marketing strategy, whole business model. Other than product, everything changed. So it was a very big pivot for us. And I put that new strategy in front of investors. They liked it. They could see the potential. And we raised $500,000. So what we decided to do is go direct to students. It's a pain point for students, and then bring colleges on the other side, make the match. And so we launched in 2018, direct to student model, and it just took off. To build a platform like Circled In, you need funding. Either you go IPO or you perish. We are building that open system. So that was the business model. Our funding with angel investors, that's what was paying the bills. We were very frugal. I come from a very humble beginning in India. It's funny, when you don't have very much growing up, you become very frugal. Even when you have six-figure salary, you don't spend. Like, I don't have the courage to spend the money honestly.
So what about the revenue side? Can you talk about how you figured out and tested or validated your revenue model?
Yeah, so we launched the college side, what we call CRP, College Recruitment Platform. We launched that in end of 2019. And the idea is that colleges will pay to use CircledIn to find the best fit candidates. And with that, they'll meet their enrollment goals. They'll improve their retention, graduation, employability, all the way through. Because right now, industry is, believe it or not, 70% failure, higher ed industry. So the stats there are mind-numbing. And the weird thing is most people do not even know about those stats. So let me share some stats. Colleges spend $10 billion plus every year to recruit their freshman class. 10 billion with a big B. 2, their retention. 59% students come back to the same campus. 41% do not, even though colleges spend $2,500 per recruit. So your CAC is $2,500 and your churn is 41%. 6-year graduation is at 60%. Will you ever go to a hospital where they say, oh, your chances of walking out alive are 60%? But we are doing that to our kids and sending them to colleges where chances of them getting a degree is at 60%. Unemployment, underemployment. Unemployment 20%, underemployment 50%. And then student debt. Student debt, $1.3 trillion. It's all negative. All these stats, I always say, any other industry, like if I were to run a company like that, I will fail the very next day. Any other industry will die. But higher education is not. Why? Because it's a public service. Because it's funded by federal government.
Got it. So it sounds like it was a relatively easier sell from a revenue standpoint when you went to the colleges.
It's still never easy. It's easier, but not easy. Because higher ed industry, like I said, they are not held to the same standards as the corporate America. Inertia is huge. Sticking with status quo won't get me fired. Why should I try something new? So it's not easy, even though it's very revolutionary idea. Oh my God, I have 200 data points on my students, my candidates. I can figure out if I'm all boys college, please do not send flyers to my daughter. That's what is happening today, right? And CircledIn changes that. So with CircledIn, they can target the students who are going to thrive on their campus. And it's not just for them, it's for students.
Can you talk about how you came up with a pricing strategy and a pricing model? What was the thought process behind it? How did you test it? Can you shed some light?
As far as pricing is concerned, it's competitive analysis. It's funny, this was another learning. So when I came from business school and worked in aerospace industry, so aerospace is very process heavy industry, but there were these minimizing the distraction requirements in the cockpit for pilot. So anything pilot has to do, they should be able to do that in 3 clicks. So I put exact same requirement to my engineering team. Anything a teenager has to do should be done in 3 clicks. Why? Because teenagers are not very different than a pilot in a very high stress situation in cockpit. My pendulum was always oversimplifying things. How can I simplify things? I thought, we are going to have 3 price points. Good, better, best. Entered into the industry, they don't understand simple things. They're used to have like 6, 7, 8 different price points and 3 or 4 different way of paying that. It was pretty complicated. So we had to follow the industry. We had to complicate our pricing because that's what they understand.
So all of this brings us to the 800-pound gorilla, which is funding. Can you share your fundraising experience? How did you pick whether to go the angel funding route, FFF, angel funding, VC funding? How did that whole process play out? What was your experience?
That question is a very long question. And here's the worst part. There is no right or wrong answer here. I know companies that are successful with bootstrap. And I know a bootstrap company that became a unicorn. I know another company that raised $120 million and 2 weeks ago imploded. First off, funding is not a measure of success. Funding is only means to the end, whatever your end is. Our end is for CircleIn to be that de facto platform. Funding is just helping us get there, hopefully. I always cringe when people say, oh, press release, we got the funding. Well, great, but keep in mind, work is just starting. Having said that, definitely fundraising is very difficult, especially for women, person of color, all of that stuff. So the thing is, you have to be mentally prepared for that.
So what does that look like to be mentally prepared? Did you have prior experience in the startup ecosystem? Did you have mentors to walk you through and say, this is what will happen? How did that play out?
I had done 1 or 2 pitching in my previous companies, just that never raised any money. But I know living in Seattle, there are some very rich people. When I initially started, I was a little naive. I thought, oh, everybody's going to love the idea. They're going to give me the check. So when we started first version, CircleIn 1.0, I started talking to investors at that time. In fact, I started talking to everybody and anybody. I became literally a networking junkie. I made so many connections. It's funny, recently my daughter was telling me that those were the days when mommy used to smell like Starbucks because I spent my days in Starbucks meeting people, even though I don't drink coffee. I just did a lot of networking, and all these angel investors, I started talking to them back then when we were working on 1.0. Didn't get any money.
What were some of the responses? Did they say, we'll get back to you and never got back? Or how did that play out like in real time?
Angel investing is very different than VC investing. Angels usually will respond. They usually do not ghost you and not respond because it's just individual talking to an individual. Having said that, they are not going to be completely honest and transparent because they know you are passionate about your product, about the idea. They are not going to come out and say, oh, your baby is ugly. But they'll make up some things like, oh, I'm not investing right now. Or, oh, this is not my space. Oh, once you have X number of users, then come back. Over the years, I built connections with them. I sent them end of the year updates, middle of the year updates, summer updates, stuff like that, kept them in the loop. There were a few people who became sort of good friends even. And then when I put the next version in front of them with a new strategy, it was much easier because one, they had seen me over the last couple of years. I don't give up and working very, very hard. Yeah.
So it sounds like the angels typically at least are people who have experience in the industry and have some non-financial connection for wanting to invest in an idea in a startup. What about VCs? Like, was it hard to get in the door?
I mean, very true. It's not just women. There are multiple factors. Just for the record, we are not inside the doors of any VC building at this point. We have not raised money from VCs. We have raised from angels, super angels, and a couple of accelerators now, not from VCs. Because VCs invest other people's money. So it's funny, they invest in startups, but they are very risk averse. In investing in new technology, it's a weird combo. When it comes to CircleIn, it does not fit inside a box. I do not match any pattern. I'm not white, so I don't fit any of the patterns. When it comes to CircleIn, it is at the intersection of EdTech, HR tech, consumer SaaS, and investors know only one or the other. They're like, whoa, what do you mean? It's an intersection of three. I don't know what to do with it. I don't feel confident, so I'm going to back off. Oh, you are too early. The typical answer you will get, oh, you are too early. This is all BS. There is actual reason is almost unknown to you.
So it sounds like you're already aware of that and you're actually planning for the fact that you shouldn't have to waste time and kind of using smarter or more efficient means to getting the funds you need. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, this is what I meant by being mentally prepared. It's like you're hiking a mountain. You check the level of difficulty. Easy, medium, hard, very hard. in this case, even if somebody tells you that, oh, fundraising is easy or medium hard, if you are a woman, person of color, not 20, creating this product that's starting in education, assume that your hike is going to be very, very hard and prepare for that, meaning that your runway should be longer. I always wanted at least 12 months of runway, no matter what.
Before you raise your next round of funds. You talked briefly about customer and product. Are there any other aspects to product development for that particular market that you found different, surprising, more difficult than you thought?
So we don't consider our market to be college. Interestingly, we consider our market to be teenagers. And that is the hardest market to penetrate. And funny thing is, we have cracked that nut.
How did you do that?
Secret sauce. So we do have all organic growth. Right now, for example, we have over 100,000 current high school students without a dime spent on ads or marketing.
Congratulations.
Our lifetime user base is getting close to 700,000. So we are doing something right. And that is where if you build a product keeping in mind your users, then it's easier to sell that. And remember, when you are selling, you are not just selling for the money. You are selling for their attention. You're selling for their time. You're selling for their data, even though students today do not write a check to us, but we still have to sell to them because they have a million different options to spend their time on. Time is the currency. They are giving their time to us. And this is where it becomes a slightly category defining product. Contributing to that is we build a product for students and we can attract students. Everything else will fall in its place. So our loyalties are to students. Students are center of our circle, hence K in our name, kids at the center of the circle. And bringing rest of the ecosystem together, that includes schools, families, colleges, employers, trade schools, nonprofit organizations. We even work with boys and girls clubs and YMCAs. If we keep our eye on the target, which is student, build a product for them. Imagine like colleges will be knocking on our door, say, hey, can we have those students? We want to connect with them because we have a program that fits their persona.
So you come from a South Asian heritage, if I'm correct, and
Right.
I share that with you. And at least based on my experience, it's not a culture that exactly glorifies either risk or ambition. And in your case, your journey requires a combination of risk and ambition. How has that played out? What advice would you have to give to other South Asian women entrepreneurs?
The most important thing, no matter where you come from, actually is knowing your biases. That is one thing I really preach to myself many times. So, for example, there are some good things and there are some bad things being from where I am from. So, very first thing was the excellence. I remember when I was a kid, I used to bring the report card home, which used to happen like 2 times a year, half yearly and final. And that day I used to hide behind the kitchen door when dad came home. Why? Because his first question used to be, who's first? Are you first? If no, it's a different conversation. If yes, okay, no more conversation. And I was never first. I was always second, always. And I always had to explain what will I do next to get to first in the next round. So it was that striving for that excellence beyond any measure, even though you may not be capable or you don't think you are capable, but you are still supposed to do that again and again and again. And that excellence, the demand. So in some ways that's good. In other ways, it can be very harmful when you become your worst self-critic, which is what I have become. It's like, oh, am I the first? Am I doing the best I can? Am I where I should be? And when I say I, it's not just I as a person, it's I as CEO of a company that is running the company. So that becomes hard. I have to remind myself all the time. And some people have told me, you need to just get out of your own way. You are too hard on yourself. It's both good and bad. If I think I could dilute just a little bit in my personality, it will be that. not just running for the best performance all the time.
And have you ever felt any self-doubt or a question of, is this ever going to be successful? Or am I the right person? Do I have all the right skills? Or is it just, no, it's got to be a problem and I've got to make it happen?
So if I say answer is no doubts, I'll be lying. No entrepreneur can tell you that they never had self-doubts. There are so many ups and downs in an entrepreneurial journey. It's ridiculous. Like you can have your best day and your worst day all in one day before lunch. So one thing I will say though, I never doubted my skills. May sound arrogant. No one can beat me in hard work. I know I'm smart. I know I can work hard. I know I don't give up. So I didn't have doubts on my stamina of working and my smarts of working. But there are always doubts. It's like, oh, anytime you hear a no from an investor or a customer, it's like, oh, what did we miss? Oh, why don't they like us? As an entrepreneur, you feel like you're a teenager and you want to be popular. And you know how teenagers feel half the time. It's like, oh my God, I'm not good enough. It's not, I'm not good enough, but it's like my product is not good enough. Is market not there? Why are they not liking me? So self-doubt is part of the journey.
And how do you get through that? How do you keep going and how do you address that?
When you have like 8 meetings on your calendar, your one meeting goes shitty, you can't just go crawl in your bed. You still have to do the next meeting. And funny thing is, your next meeting could turn out to be the best meeting. And then suddenly you are high on a mountain.
So you just keep going. As Winston Churchill said, when you're going through hell, you just keep going.
Just keep going. There's no other option. You can't not work. You can't pause. There's no time to pause in this journey.
Slightly different question. One of the things we hear, especially if you're out raising funds or dealing with the financing sector in any capacity, is this presumed incompetence with numbers and financial projections. Have you ever faced this in terms of questioning or the line of questioning by potential investors or financiers? And how have you dealt with that?
Well, good and bad, this is what comes with excellence. I am a data nerd, big time. I love Excel. From day one, I had very, 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 very detailed financial model. And I talk in numbers. Like, I think in some ways I'm like investors in that. And I needed that. I think that's for every entrepreneur. It's not for investors. It's for you. As an entrepreneur, are you on the right track? Does this path leads to pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? And if your company, do you have operational expenses? Where the money is going? What is P&L? Where can you cut the expense if you have to? So all that was needed anyway. And I needed to know $500,000 that we have raised, how far that will go. I had projections from day one. I can talk anything when it comes to numbers. My latest model, believe it or not, I even had per square foot rent in Seattle area in my projections.
I'm not surprised.
My financial projections are like 15 tab Excel sheet, including the cost of memory and number of machines needed on cloud to serve X number of students.
So just truly bottom up to say, start from the beginning and then build it all the way up to your top line numbers, whether it's revenue or costs and any of that other stuff.
Everything. Yeah.
And it sounds like there was no presumption of the fact that you didn't know what you're talking about when you were talking to potential investors. That didn't sound like an issue at all.
Not for the numbers. Yes, there's always, they may be rolling their eyes in their head. It's like, oh yeah, she thinks she can get 2,000 colleges. Sure, we'll see. That is different. They may doubt your assumptions, which will happen. But as long as you have clarity, you can say, this is what I think I can do, and this is where we will be. You can clearly articulate that. I think that's plenty for investors because they know there will be unforeseen things that will happen. Like, who knew COVID will happen? Did anyone plan for that? No. So investors know that will happen. All they need to know, which I'm told, that you know your numbers and you have the problem solving and critical thinking in you, that you can fix them. You have skills to turn things around.
Looking back kind of now where you're at, Is there anything you'd have done differently from the beginning? Anything you'd have said, I wish I'd known this?
I won't even subtract one day from my life so far.
No regrets.
No. There was one promise I made to myself, actually, very early on. Every decision I make is based on the information I know as of today. I did my best. I made that decision. Tomorrow, things will change. Tomorrow, you'll have more information. You'll have different information. Does that make my older decision wrong? No, absolutely not. I did the right decision at that moment. Every decision is in a moment. You go further down, things will change. You may have to pivot. You may have to change directions. But there should not be any regrets for anything you did. There's no way you could have known what will happen in the future to make a different decision in the past.
What advice would you give somebody who is further behind on the path of entrepreneurship?
I think there are two most important things in any founder's journey. First is convincing yourself. Second is convincing the market. So convincing yourself is the harder part. And that includes a lot of pros and cons calculation. That includes Excel sheet. You will lose one salary and taking a vacation in Bahamas and having a big SUV and a big house. Are you ready to let go of that? That's convincing yourself. And then leaving that rat race altogether. Entering a different rat race. So that's convincing yourself and making your family part of that, because no matter what you do, your immediate family will be impacted, good or bad, either way. Think hard. This is not going to be an easy journey. Entrepreneurship is not for faint of heart by any means.
So what is the one thing that keeps you going no matter how hard things are? What is that one specific thing?
My ultimate mission, my ultimate definition of success, which is my legacy.
Which is?
Circled in is going to be my legacy. And I'm working on my legacy.
So what does it look like if your wildest dreams come true and there's one moment which to you encapsulates that you have succeeded? What would that real life moment be?
Actually, there are two. So one is we are ringing the bell on New York Stock Exchange. Second is the day I die, there are millions of people who are crying.
All right, I'll take that. Thank you very much, Reetu. This has been amazing, and I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking the questions. Once in a while, it's good to stop and reflect back on the journey. So thank you for selecting me for that.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Find show notes and more at achieve.co. That's achieve.co/podcast. Like what you heard? Hit subscribe on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcast and never miss another episode. Want to help others like you? Leave us a review and tell a friend. See you on the next episode. Now, go achieve.